First, we're going to think about the bottom tier of the ARC framework, the attachment tier. If we were thinking about the framework as a house, this would be the foundations. Now, when we think about our work with children, particularly with children who've experienced trauma, the most important thing we have to offer them is our relationship with them. This relationship can also be thought of as an attachment. When I think about attachment, I think about John Bowlby, a psychoanalyst who came up with the idea of attachment theory. John Bowlby talked about safety and security as a basic human need like food or water. He said that we get this sense of security through emotional bonds or attachments to our primary caregivers that we develop as infants in the first 6 months of life. Through repeated experiences of being responded to, we develop an inner roadmap of our expectations of relationships, and then this is then taken into future relationships. So when children come to nursery, even the babies have an experience and expectation of relationships. Children who are securely attached will expect you to be a helpful person who can do things for them, will expect other children will be interested in playing with them, will ask for help if they need it, will be able to play and participate. If children have parents or carers who haven't responded in a reliable way to their needs, they may develop an insecure attachment, which will affect their expectations of others and their feelings about themselves. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here about different attachment behaviours, but I just wanted to get across the idea that some children don't have an expectation of adults as a source of safety and security. In fact, quite the opposite. Some children may see adults as a source of danger and may expect to be hurt and rejected. They may have bodies that feel out of control and may have feelings that are too overwhelming to manage. And these children can be very difficult to work with because they can elicit very difficult feelings in us, sometimes very primitive feelings. Sometimes we may find ourselves responding in really punitive ways. Sometimes we may see the children as monsters and ourselves as monstrous. So it can be a vicious cycle. They unconsciously project feelings onto us that belong to them, either as a communication or to get rid of anxiety. For example, a child who expects to be told off may behave really badly, so eventually his teacher will act in a punitive way. Also, we all come with our own experiences. So if we grew up, say, with an aggressive father, a little boy being very aggressive towards us can trigger a stress response in us. Even though rationally we know it's only a little boy, emotionally it may not feel like that. This makes me think of my children when they were little. My son is 2.5 years older than my daughter, and if they were playing and he became rough or dominating, I'd have a really visceral response to it, really strong response that was totally out of proportion of what was going on, and much more about me and my older sister playing when we were little than about my children. When I eventually made this connection, it really helped me manage those situations better. Now I want you to take a moment to think about a child whose behaviour is challenging to you and to focus on how it makes you feel. The sort of things people usually say are angry, frustrated, guilty, confused, sad, ineffective, ashamed, hopeless, helpless. Quite an overwhelming range of feelings that we may then have our own fight or flight response to, which is why the first block of this tier of the framework is adult self-regulation and self-care. Like on an aeroplane, when we're told to put on an oxygen mask first before helping someone else with theirs, we need to try to regulate ourselves first before responding to a child. And I think the first step in this is noticing how we're feeling. Even that act of noticing slows things down a bit, so we're not reacting from our own survival centres. And once we've noticed how we're feeling, we can get in tune with how the child's feeling. Brazelton, a psychologist working in the 70s, talked about communication being like a dance, a two-way flow of communication where each partner responds to the communication of the other. So it means observing what's going on for them and responding empathically. This is the second tier of the block of the tier, which is called attunement. But what does this observing entail? It's not just what a child is saying, but what they're doing, what their bodies are doing. We know that most communication is non-verbal. Maybe the tension in their body, their facial expression, their tone of voice, their behaviour, a sense of connection or withdrawal. Sometimes it's really hard to see what's happened, the triggers are hidden, and that's where we need to use our knowledge of the children that we build up over time. It makes me think about a little boy I used to work with who'd experienced real abuse and neglect when he was little. He and I would be playing in the therapy room, and then, as if out of nowhere, he would trash the room, and it would always be completely unexpected for me. I hadn't seen it coming at all. And what I learned was that it was closeness that triggered this boy. Being close made him feel very unsafe because of his experiences. And that knowledge really helped me support this boy. It didn't make the behaviour go away overnight, but it helped me manage it better, which in turn helped him. But sometimes you will get things wrong, whether you're dealing with another child or trying to clear up the lunch things or just caught up in something really difficult going on in your own life. You won't always be able to notice what's going on for a child you're working with or what they're trying to communicate to you. Brazelton, the psychologist I referred to earlier, called these missteps in the dance. And that the important thing was about adjusting and getting back in step with each other. This happens with parents too all the time, and it's about noticing that things have gone awry and trying again. Which brings me to the last block of this attachment tier of the ARC framework, which is about having a consistent response. We know that all children thrive on having a consistent and predictable environment. Children who've experienced trauma may have lived in a very chaotic environment, so this consistency is even more important than ever. But it can feel very foreign to them, and boundary setting may be experienced as very frightening. Control can be a big issue for children who've experienced trauma, and feelings of shame and guilt can be easily triggered. So boundary setting with children who've experienced trauma may need some adjustment, starting with adjusting our expectations, but also engaging the children in the process. So that, in brief, is the attachment tier of the ARC framework. The take-home message is about regulating yourself, observing, attuning, and responding.